Ooh. Bienvenue. Welcome once again to the slightly reduced Property Quorum. Due to commitments by other parties, unfortunately, we are just us. But never fear, we have a great topic and we shall do our very best to try and pull its innards out and to display it all for you so that you can see its further machinations. We are talking about whether or not self-management is becoming too much. Of course, we're talking about owners taking on the sometimes onerous task of actually managing their own properties. Hamish, as ever, my faithful companion, can you explain what this topic is about? And then I've dug out some questions to throw at you, and let's see if we can generate some discussion.
Well, good morning to all. Glorious sunny day here in Oxfordshire again.
Yes, it's beautiful here too.
Glorious weekend in the Oxfordshire countryside as well. So here we are. We spent the only podcast of the week which takes place in the morning, I might add. To those of you listening in the morning, I trust wherever you are, whatever time of day, you're actually enjoying yourself as well. Yes, the subject of self-management. It's one of those things. How good are we at managing self? This sort of comment comes about, doesn't it? All those people working from home these days, are they good at self-managing? Interesting to note. We have recently the Renters' Rights Act came into being, the long-awaited reform. And unfortunately, with the majority of reforms that sort of come about, we have to look at the aftermath of those reforms taking place. What really are the genuine outcomes? And I think this is one of the aspects that we need to look at very, very carefully, because there's a lot rolling out as a consequence of that Renters' Rights Act, which isn't necessarily 100% in the favour of those who would like to rent a property, of those who are actually sort of relying on the private rental market for their properties, because there are becoming more and more onerous tasks that unfortunately the poor old landlord has to be responsible for. And one of the aspects that sort of people seem to fail to understand, it's a little bit like the conveyancing process in itself, with buying and selling. The more activities you put in between the buying and the selling of those properties, not only the more complicated does it become, but the more costly it becomes, because there's more and more input. Now, what we have had, and really the biggest, the most significant burden that was put upon property owners was actually put there by strangely enough, the Conservative Party during their sort of tenure of sort of 14 years. Bit by bit, they put greater demand on the landlords, the owners of their properties, making it a little bit more, denying them sort of tax relief on certain aspects of maintenance of the properties. The local councils doubling up on actually sort of charging extra on their monthly sort of charges that they actually sort of put out for people with second homes and sort of all the rest of it. And then, if you like, the increased sort of tax burden that the current sort of government have actually sort of put in.
Let's not face the ever rising necessity for compliance, gas safety, EICRs, EPCs, deposits, of course the right to rent, the repairs, notices, rent increases, tenancy documents, and now of course the renters' rights. It's all created this extra heavy millstone. The question is, I guess, whether or not two property landlords can still, one or two your property landlords, so if they've only got a couple of properties in their portfolio, can still safely self-manage without proper systems and the knowledge that you're required to manage those systems.
Well, unfortunately, you didn't really time to explain all of them, mind you. I could have been here for a week, couldn't I?
Yes.
Explaining all of the complications that are being added to what was a very straightforward. Listening to a barrister yesterday who was explaining sort of quite subtly that one of one of the major challenges that losing voice that faces us in the UK is not so much the burden of law, but the complications of law, because law itself has become so much more complicated
Right.
over years. And in order to change laws, so many different things sort of seem to happen. However, it is possible to gradually sort of unpick each of those particular pieces to go back to making it simple. However, as far as property is concerned, that's an impossibility. What is an advantage? There are systems now. There are systems available that landlords can buy into, which can actually notify them when the gas needs sorting.
Right.
Is the EPC up to date? All these other various things. However, there's one particular aspect that we must remember, that whatever we do, and I'm speaking about this as well with as when I was speaking about conveyancing as a whole, everything that you add into the pot costs money. And many people are out there finding a solution for you. I have just the thing that you need. It does cost money, though. So ultimately, what we're actually trying to do, we've got the government trying to do one thing. And in fairness, one must sort of say the government, that's absolutely great. We want to make sure that people are safely in their homes. Trouble is, they're making it complicated, so it makes it harder to do that. But from that one particular aspect, they're saying, look, we want people to be within their homes. We want them to have safe housing. We want that landlord to look after them. However, we forget from time to time that landlords aren't the challenge. Very often, money is the challenge. We do have people always take advantage, but money is very often the challenge. So when you create those particular sort of burdens, what we have lost, we already know this. We've lost many of those smaller landlords. I don't mean smaller in stature. I actually mean, of course, those that have smaller portfolios. They have got away from the market. They've actually sort of said, right, that's enough. I was speaking to one of my sort of people that I know very well within the property industry, and he said, well, I just got rid of my last 6 properties. I'm living in Spain now. Why would I want all of the troubles of trying to keep up to date with everything that's going on there?
All right. So look, one of the things that strikes me is that it used to be seen that taking on multiple properties, was a passive thing. You took it on, you took the money, they got on with their lives, you got on with yours. But with the stronger tenants' rights and ombudsman style complaint handling and more scrutiny on those repairs, landlords need to think more like less like passive investors and more like service providers. A huge mindset shift. I've got one other point to make, which kind of links today's podcast with tomorrow's one, which is which of course is Cladding Matters, where we talk about building safety. For blocks of flats, especially with fire safety, cladding and compartmentation, asbestos, lifts, alarms, statutory records, the stakes are so much higher now. The question is not just, can we manage this ourselves, but do we know what we're legally responsible for? It's so much more onerous, Hamish.
I think, but of course, this adds to the cost, because there needs to be then membership of an association. There needs to be a closer contact with the legal team that are helping you to actually sort of pull your contracts together for your properties and all of those particular sort of aspects. But the most important thing is it's all very well to say, look, we're protecting the interests of the tenants. However, we're not necessarily helping the tenants out, because the complication that adds to it as well, there are various stipulations being created by the majority of councils now that they have the right to be invasive about the privately owned properties that have been rented out, and can actually sort of investigate, look into, and decide upon those particular properties.
Right.
Whereas the same kind of approach is not somehow being applied to those properties that they own themselves, either the social housing properties. Social housing isn't considered necessarily to be private in some respects, but also there's council properties themselves. They don't fall under the same arduous sort of criticism, yet so many of those, surprisingly, are infamous in terms of the way in which their properties are handled. I know one very, very well. A family who, in fact, both of whom is mother and daughter, both of whom actually sort of suffer from health issues as a consequence of lungs. And mold appeared in this particular sort of property some sort of 10 to 12 years ago. And the actual sort of the owners of the property, the social housing organization, said, we will look into it. Now, it actually took them 5 years to look into it, in which particular sort of point in time, both the mother and daughter have suffered more as a consequence of that sort of dampness within there and the removal of the mold. And really, the housing association weren't taking it seriously,
Yes.
rather because they were getting the rent paid. And since they were getting the rent paid, they were quite happy with that. And of course, the other aspect is, should the occupants, should the mother have decided, well, I'm going to withhold my rent because you're not doing anything about the property, what would happen next? Who do they look on the side of? Do they look on the side of the tenant? Do they
Yes.
look on the side of the owner? So,
No,
but anyway,
the tenant was scammed, I think, in that circumstance, and the trouble is, if they had, I mean, look, if you go to a garage and to get your car fixed, and when you get it, you find that it's been not completed as planned, you're complete within your rights to withhold payment. However, the same cannot be cannot be true for people renting, especially from organizations like a council rent. If they aren't taken seriously, you don't have a very large stick to hit them with. I have another thing to bring up, and this is something which is perhaps bringing something of the now. Tech tools, portals, spreadsheets, apps, AI. Supposedly, they make self-management easier, but they don't remove the legal responsibility, do they? They're a good point is, does technology help owners stay compliant, or does it give them a dangerous sense, a false sense of security that everything is in fact covered?
Well, the challenge with many of these technical sort of applications, whether it be through sort of software, whether it be through sort of mathematical skills that one needs to evolve, it's quite interesting. You actually speak to somebody, and all they have is a house that they want to let out. It's very, very simple. It's very, very basic. I have a house here which I would like to let out, but then what we've added, that there should be, naturally, there should be legal requirements against just any old person being able to let out any old property.
Right.
That we do have this strange aspect as well, that those who know the way to bend the rules are always going to bend the rules anyway.
Right.
We are still going to find properties which have been let and sublet and all the rest of it, and have 10 or 12 people living in there because it hasn't actually been sort of checked out. And it's only normally in the event of some kind of disaster that people find out. Now, the big problem is, how on earth do these councils, who are very, very stretched in terms of the people that are responsible for investigating, how many people are qualified to go out and investigate whether a property is sound or not, whether all the legal requirements are being... how much training do those people require, or new people require? Can councils take on new people to actually investigate this particular sort of aspect of what's sort of going on? So really, you've got the two sides to it. Can the councils, or whoever is meant to be responsible for looking into this, the management of these particular rented properties? So you've got on that one particular side, and you've got the, if you like, not so much hounding, because it's not hounding it as such. It's basically pressure that's being put on to administer yet another layer, and so layer after layer after layer. And this is why, of course, so we have noticed, as we've mentioned before, there are a large number of people leaving, but what we have had is that increase in the handing over. Now, we know, for example, that one of the ways in which estate agents can actually add to their portfolio isn't just to sell properties, but also to be letting agents for properties. So effectively, what a property owner can do is pass over their responsibility to estate agents,
Right.
to landlords. Now and again, we do actually sort of find that who becomes responsible when the letting agent has failed to keep the landlord in touch with the actual rules and regulations that are going on. Who checks out the letting agent? Who's responsible, the landlord or the letting agent? And there are complexities added to it. Unfortunately, what all of this means is, because we're making it more and more difficult, and we've added that additional layer, there is that additional cost. And it may not be today that rent is increased. However, the landlord has every right to, as his costs increase, to increase fairly those particular costs.
Yes.
So
Because
who is going
landlord,
to pay for it?
the landlord's not in there just for his own good. He's in there to make a profit. This is a business concern after all. It's not a charity. And if that's the case, of course they've got the right to keep the rent in line with inflationary pressures. But the situation we have now is it's becoming more and more onerous for an owner landlord to maintain a couple of properties without professionalizing, and that of course comes with its own sets of costs. Hamish, would you care to give us a quick roundup, and let's take this home?
Right. Well, the sad thing is that we do need to professionalize, and there are so many landlords out there. And I mean, had Silas sort of been able to attend today, he would have been able to explain through his own experience exactly what these landlords, they love to keep that working relationship with their clients, because they know their residents. If they're speaking to them and they're regularly in touch with them, there's a significant difference in the outcome,
Right.
because they are in touch. Once it becomes corporate, once it becomes letting agent, what time do each of those letting agents have to spend with their particular sort of clients? Be interesting. What we'll have to try and do is see if we can get a letting agent on board, and
That would
see if
be
we can sort of bring one along to discuss what has happened with them and how they have seen matters change. It is a challenge, but it is going to increase the cost. But there are the benefits. It's a mixed bag, isn't it? Because
very
there's some
much.
great landlords out there, and there are some poor landlords out there. What is this going to? Are we going to apply a sieve to be able to let the failing landlords drop out?
Well,
Or are
I've
we
said
just
I've said for some time, I think the tendency will be to move to corporatization, so that you end up with much fewer actual landlords. The landlords that cannot cope with the extra regulation, the onerous tasks of maintaining and so on, are going to be selling up. They already are. I mean, my dear friend Chris Gilson, friend of the show, who deals in that end of the market a lot, says that he's constantly coming across landlords who just buy my properties, buy my portfolio. I've had enough. And the tendency will be towards there being a few corporate landlords who won't really care. about the likes of you and I. They just want it to be done by the numbers, by the book, pay your dues or sling the hook. And that means, I think, the reduction in actual proper customer service and the tendency towards a more corporatized mode. And I'm not sure that's a great way. Having said that, I mean, Germany thrives on that. So who knows? It might. But although the rents in Germany have gone through the roof, and I don't know, it does appear to be a direction we're taking, whether that's good or bad. Thank you so much, Hamish. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I see there's been quite a few of you. We're going to have more exciting topics. Hopefully, we'll have more numbers. People are away, people are ill and unavailable, but we've got plenty of great topics and people to discuss them with coming up for future ones. Remember, tomorrow we've got Cladding Matters at 1 p.m. And that, as usual, should be a series of interest and revelations. So do come along there for that. And for now, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please look after your mental health. From Hamish and myself, bye-bye.